Buckle up for AEC Trailblazers, the Founders Files, where we crack open the stories of the brightest minds in the AEC startup scene. Forget institutional pitches. We're diving deep into the real personal journeys of these industry disruptors. Get ready for some casual chats firsthand.
Hello, and welcome to the AC Trailblazers podcast. Here we interview the most amazing founders of the AC. Today we have André Agi. He's the CPO and co-founder of Spacio. André aims to help architects gain insight and understanding of building performance. André targets design complexity through algorithms and graphics to communicate design intent and allow for better outcomes. We also have here with us Franz Forsberg. He's the CEO and co founder of Spacio. Franz is dedicated to merging architecture and engineering. He aims to bridge the gap between them to develop tools to design and evaluate great buildings, focusing on sustainable environmental design and circularity. Andre, Franz, do you want to introduce yourself or add anything to your bios?
My name is André. I am from Sweden. We are a Swedish Scandinavian company. My background is within architecture, and so I've been involved in doing urban design, master planning, residential design, and general office spaces. But always had a foot within parametric design and coding along my professional career. And currently, I'm here together with the second co-founder, Franz. So,
Hi guys,
maybe
my name is Franz Forsberg, co-founder of Spacio. You can we are a Scandinavian company, but I'm also half French, as you can hear. My background is within architecture and also building engineering, building physics. And my studies and my late studies and my experiences has mostly been focused on how to gap the bridge between designers and the engineers, evaluating the projects at the different time phases. Yes, so working with environmental design, how to use simulation tools as indicators in an iterative way to basically improve the design very early on and also along the more detailing program. So that's my take.
Thanks for the extra info, guys. Where and when did you start? What were you and were you both doing before founding Spacio along with Stein that drove you to the point of considering entrepreneurship? I know you have worked a lot on the AC, so can you tell us a little bit about your journey and your experience?
no, we all. There's also a third musketeer in the group, our third co-founder, Stian, who unfortunately couldn't join us today. But we were all working at the same place or the same office before we started to make our own journey. From my point of view, I always was intrigued from the university side, even with Grasshopper and coding and parametric and being able to automate very repetitive tasks and kind of like embed knowledge within algorithms that I definitely thought I saw that this was the future for the industry, sort of when we entered that space. And then along the road, I've been working on different offices in Scandinavia as a half-time architect and half-time within digital development. And therefore, we kind of like gradually followed and saw which steps the industry took towards being more and more digitalized and more automated, sort of. So it felt inevitable that there is going to become this like big jump into what's now mentioned as AI or procedural stuff or automation within the industry.
For me, it was more like a frustration using all kind of different softwares to analyze different building performance aspects, such as daylight, thermal comfort, energy, and so on. You have at least one software to use for that specific analysis. And and it's very time consuming to extract data, to convert data, to move data from one place to the other. And that's where using mainly Grasshopper in the beginning and then different APIs and different hacks, that's how I saw coding or taking into this digital literacy to optimize my own processes and to be able to advise architects faster, better, and stronger than the traditional way of, which is very linear and ineffective. Yeah.
Yes, I guess that's a common thing, right? Like the lack of interoperability between tools. It is frustrating. But I feel that we all start the journey the same, either with Dynamo or Grasshopper, like you did. But the thing is that I feel that doesn't provide scalability. Like it's great if you're trying to improve certain workflows, but if you want to implement this on a larger scale, it's pretty hard. So I can see behind that a little bit of why did you started with Spacio. Do you feel there were other motivators or other reasons why you decided to start with your own company? And also, I'm just curious, how was the moment of taking that specific decision? How did you decide it, and what changed from being just, let's say, a computational designer or something like that into an actual software developer?
I think the what takes to make the change is a real drive. And for us, it was that frustration of things could be better and we know how to make it better. So we want to make it better. And then it's about the level of ambitions. And if you really believe in your own ambitions, you usually want some ownership on the things you develop. And often when you're employed somewhere, you don't get to have any ownership. And that for us was the critical point where we had the frustration as a drive. We saw the ambition that we could make a big impact, but we needed to be in control of that process because no one would really understand it. At least not necessarily in big organizations, the leadership. And then it's a bet. It's a gut feelings bet. And once you take it, there is no way back. And there is may be some a few things you miss, but one thing we definitely don't miss is to write every Friday how many hours we worked on what kind of projects. The hour tracking is not something that we do, and in itself, it's enough for us to never go back.
It was actually pretty refreshing because none of us has any like professional background within software development. So we all took our first baby step when starting the company into becoming software development. And the comparison between the AEC industry in general, like how organizations work, and the so much project focused, so much like heavily invested into a single budget within a project, compared to building something much longer and larger as a software. I must say it was a bit refreshing to being able to devote your entire like mindset and not being able to worry about billable hours and what's within the budget frames and so on. So part of it's of course a lot different and stressful, but also very refreshing to being able to work within like purely code and everything that the software and SaaS industry kind of like opens up and gives you.
Our budget frame is not that great now, neither.
Don't worry. I guess the budget frame is a problem that we all entrepreneurs have. So you're not alone there. But for me, it's really interesting what you're saying about that you were not used to be software developers and that you focus more on the knowledge you have on the industry. And I think that's a key. You can find amazing software developers, and as long as you know enough to explain what to develop, they can do an amazing job. But what is harder is to have someone from the industry understanding the problem and thinking on a digital product like you are doing, I don't know if you feel that that's a plus on you being architects creating software for architects as well.
That's what also gives credibility, I think, to the team, that we know what we're talking about, at least in our markets, at least there. And that shows, that helps with the traction and I think the credibility factor. Because people are indeed tired of software development companies who doesn't necessarily know very much on what they develop for. So that's where we think architects can make something for architects. And hopefully, with the high level of usability of those different tools and creating AI models and everything, of course, it's not given to anyone, but it's becoming so accessible that I think we will see more and more professionals changing their own field instead of relying on third parties.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's something that we have also suffered as well. That there are companies that don't know about the industry trying to create products. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? I know so many amazing people that come from outside the industry and are creating amazing products. But I do feel that sometimes there are services companies that they don't know enough about the industry, and they don't spend enough time because they just jump from one project to another, and I feel that's the problem. But I do like that you mentioned AI, and it's kind of something that everybody's speaking about lately. So I'm just curious, what's the role of AI in Spacio right now, and what what do you see, or what do you feel is going to change in the coming years with the implementation of AI in our industry?
Yeah, there's a lot of points actually touching on like there's no denying that AI is the shit right now. Everyone is talking about. We have some aspects of AI, of course, in the platform, but most of it is like purely procedural, parametrical algorithms under the hood, so to say. But we definitely saw like the possibilities that AI is opening up. It's insane and it's fantastic, but it requires the structured data, and the industry has really been lacking any kind of like solid data foundation of how we describe buildings and how we document things and decisions and so on. So we took our own, we had our sources of inspiration and our own take on how we want to describe buildings in both within Spacio, but also to being able, along the line of the development process, to be able to generate our own training materials for AI algorithms and machine learning scripts, so that we can have a uniform description of a building, sort of like a agnostic way of describing the relationship between spaces. So one of the core essential parts actually of Spacio is that we have a graph representation of a building or of spaces, actually heavily inspired by the work of an app called Topologic. Wasim, who's been doing great work within that domain. And it's because of several reasons. Like we saw, Franz has been working out within energy simulations, where it's actually required to know every single like connection between spaces, both vertically and horizontally. And it also opens up so many other good possibilities of having that like graph structure of a building, so we can compare hundreds of thousands of different residential buildings and see what's the common pattern between spaces, what's like different about this particular building, but also to make that like solid data foundation in order to build stronger data and training materials for AI. So I'm very curious to see where the industry will head and go with this, because there's currently such a diverse way of how design is documented.
Absolutely. I feel what Dr. Wasim is doing with Topologic is it's an amazing work. So kudos to him, and thanks for providing such an amazing library to the industry. But I am also curious, given the fact that you're using AI and there is a lot of discussions about on how do you train or what data do you use to train your models. I think we are all familiar with a lot of people complaining about like Midjourney using their designs, or even writers that are complaining about ChatGPT that it's creating new books based on their books. So I'm just curious, do you have the same problem, or what materials are you using to train your algorithms?
We're basically generating our own training materials, so to say, because we have some generative aspects in the platform, which allows us to, let's say, generate a bunch of plots and then generate hundreds or thousands of different building options and configurations within there. And on those buildings, we can then make, let's say, for example, daylight machine learning scripts. So we can run actual daylight simulations. So we have the ground truth, and then we have the foundation of the bare raw buildings, and then building that bridge between, here's a building designed by someone in Spacio, we can run a instant daylight prediction on that particular building. So in general, we generate everything by ourselves.
We also have a lot of documented floor plans, existing floor plans that we look at and measure and to build the knowledge on. But for everything related to building performance and training learning models that can predict daylight, thermal comfort, energy use, and so on, here we use our generative tools, yes, to generate a bunch of data and make the valid truth.
I also feel that in general, people think on AI of something that is gonna change everything, and I don't think AI per se is gonna do it, because AI is just technology. Is like us saying that a hammer is gonna change the way we build. I guess the most important thing is going to be processes and how we implement that technology. Um, but I don't know what are your thoughts on this?
I was invited late autumn by the Norwegian Engineer Association on their yearly debate about which the theme was AI last year. And among the other speakers, we were mostly agreeing that for our industry or any specific industry to make great breakthrough in how they work with their processes will be, like I said, and like we said earlier, the change has to come from us. We, the guys with the domain expertise, need to make those tools in a meaningful way, respecting everything we know that has to be for safety, quality insurance, and so on. It won't should really come from the outside. Just for example, rendering architecture. You have Midjourney, you have those language models, but they're not made for architecture. So until and I know some companies are already using those mainstream models and they're tuning them just to make architectural illustrations as we wanted them to be. Then they will come to a product with a product to the market that makes something much easier than the general way of just using Midjourney today, which is pretty straightforward. And that's the same with our tools. We will create the good tools that allows designers to work iteratively, to test and fail and to learn from their design. And the ambition with Spacio is to be such a design platform where you can connect different tools, because the way data is structured in Spacio will allow anyone to connect through the API and to leverage the algorithm that we have, and also, that should be easy to connect to. And if other companies, other actors on the market also are seeing things which are a pain today and they can use new technology to solve it, I think it will be easy to bring to the market and to the users.
I think another crucial aspect also to the of how or the reason why people are going to adopt and use the technology is mostly down to the interface and the user experience, and also how easily accessible the technology becomes. I think a great example of that is actually when we saw a ChatGPT launch, a very highly complex technology that was all of a sudden accessible to the entire world, almost just through a simple, straightforward interface where you type and you chat with the large language model. And in the end, that's like if we take parametric design, for example, that's been around for quite a few years now. But up until today, there's only a handful of architects that actually have the dare or like to dive into a Grasshopper script and use the sliders and the spaghetti code and so on. So in most cases, I believe it's the user interface that's the barrier between the user and the technology. So making that as easily accessible as possible is a winning game.
It's great what you mentioned, Franz, about all these companies working on using AI for rendering products. But the same can be said about other tools in the market that are using generative design or machine learning to basically help you on the design process, creating um, different type of initial morphologies, and even sometimes helping owners, not only architects, but also helping owners and developers on the process. What do you feel is your value proposition regarding Spacio, and how do you compare with other tools that are out there in the market?
André, you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Um, the main idea behind Spacio is that we this has been mentioned several times, but the value chain in projects usually lies in the beginning, in the early feasibility studies. Is where you have the flexibility of doing like fast dramatic changes and kind of setting the direction of the project. So for us, we felt, of course, that's where the value lies. That's where what the Spacio should help you solve, because there's a constant increase in parameters that architects need to look at during project design and the phases. So basically, we wanted to do a platform that allows you to deal with every single aspects that you need to look at during a design phase and make decisions out of those. So while designing, you could, for example, automate the parking spaces and getting the floor plan layout and that you want, and also making sure that all like building performance requirements in terms of daylight and energy so on is fulfilled. So that's kind of the foundation where Spacio lives from the very early sketches in a project up until building permit. So we don't want it to make it into just a volumetric conceptual tool. So it actually takes you to a buildable building. And that's something we want to firmly stand behind. So you get the high level of detail, but there's a fast step to it. Instead of taking days to make conceptual designs, you get it within a couple of minutes in the platform.
That is great. But I'm just curious, what lies in the future for Espacio? What do you want to do in the future, or what's in your roadmap in terms of, do you plan to expand to any type of building? I mean, just going from residential to sky racers, or malls and hospitals. What's your idea in terms of type of buildings, and also what's your idea in terms of market? I know you recently been in Japan, France, so jealous about it. And um, also thinking on expanding to other markets and make this something global, or what are your takes on what's coming with Spacio in the future?
Talking.
Yeah.
I was
No, you
talking
go.
about residential because it's the somehow the easy part or the low demand. An easy part will be a empty floor office building, for example. And we're still starting with the feasibility study because it's also the start of the start. But once we're confident with residential, we will move on to other categories, probably office first and then those mixed used. But we have strong experience in a lot of educational buildings as well, schools from kindergarten to universities. We have designed many hospitals and so on as well. So our ambition is to support everything, definitely. But then there is time and priorities. Uh, and it's also, you mentioned Japan, but buildings are very cultural, and even in Scandinavia, it's not the same as Middle Europe, which is not the same as Florida, or it won't be the same as West Coast, I suppose. Neither is Japan. Yes. So we are first developing for the architecture that we know, and as we will grow, we will try to embrace the different cultural diversity that there is in architecture, and also try to codify it. So now for Japan, it's because I've been studying and living there for 6 years, long time ago, and we were invited by the Innovation Week of Hokkaido on the North Japan, as they try to be a opening door to the Japanese market. So we are for the moment looking for a partner there to discuss with us what are the Japanese specificities of buildings, what makes sense for them to have as KPIs, how do you calculate netto area from brutto area, what are your reglementation, and so on. There's a lot to discuss to basically know the depth of what will be a project to fit Spacio for the Japanese market. As for the any market, it's kind of the process we have to go through to basically know what we have to develop so we can budget it, time it, and eventually go on with it. So now we're focusing on Northern Europe, Germany countries, UK, for specific development of specific features. But we always have a very international mindset. And we really wish to push Spacio everywhere in the world, because most architects, every architect deserves a better process, a better toolkit. And like André says, buildings become more and more difficult to comply for. So we definitely need data to work for us when it makes sense.
One part project of or a module we're developing within Spacio is sort of, you can say it's a spell checker for your buildings. So it's a code compliance system that we aim to get it to work for the entire world, all different areas. And it becomes very obvious so how much it actually differs between countries and what makes a yes or a no for a buildable building. But that's one of the features that have been, I would say, one of the more requested ones, to have sort of like a, we mention it's the equivalent of when you're typing in Word, a text, you spell it wrong, it gets highlighted in red, say, hey, you need to put some attention into this, or spell it the right way. And sort of the same system we're developing for Spacio. So if you design something that's without outside of the building code boundaries, it would yell at you basically and say that you need to fix something here. So, but it's interesting to see how fragmented and how much diversity there is with what every country says it's important to set as a threshold for a buildable building.
It's interesting that you're mentioning construction codes, and I feel that's such a big need, and it's a process that takes so much time when it shouldn't. And this is something that happens globally. I don't think that's a European or American or South American thing. It just happens everywhere. Um, so it's great that you're thinking on working on that. But I do feel that counties, municipalities, and cities in general, they have a lot to add here, because I feel that there are in many cases where construction codes are not digitalized, so there is not even an API that you can access automatically specific pieces of the code, or even get portions of the city so you can see the environmental conditions. Do you foresee this changing, or what trends do you see regarding to this?
We know there are ongoing projects, at least in Denmark and Sweden, that we know of, that are actually they started a journey of digitalizing all the building coding and allowing it through an API. It's not here today, but it's within a couple of years, we believe. So, but I think we see that trend for both in terms of like digital twins for entire cities, that you don't need to download and remodel a contextual module for every single project. Just download the latest updated version of your local city, and you have all the access to the building code and the current conditions, and much more like up to date actual data. So at least I hope that's where the industry is heading.
I would say Denmark is in front line of every regulatory discussion on the European level. We use, at least in Norway, also a lot of those MIT robots to scan, drill holes automatically, the spring holes, everything which is really repetitive. Because we have a very high cost of labor in Scandinavia. So it makes a lot of sense very often to digitalize. And I know it's not necessarily the same for other economies. But we have a lot of construction sites which are paper free, for example. So everything is done with digital tools, iPads, and so on.
It's hard to say, but we see, of course, some differences between countries of what's the minimum or what's the expected like delivery of file formats. Do you expect to deliver a 3D model, or is it CAD based? And there's of course variation, but in general, maybe Scandinavia has been on the forefront of adapting to BIM and better precision and deliveries within projects.
Even when you mentioned that Denmark is ahead in certain aspects, I feel Scandinavia in general, it's something special in the world where you are leading so many developments. Actually, a lot of amazing companies, even a couple of them like Spacemaker that was acquired by Autodesk, um, came from Scandinavia. So I think we're in general, generally in the industry, surprised of the amount of startups and innovations that come from that region of the world. Um, why do you feel this is happening? There's not such a big population there. The weather is hard. So, what are the good things that you feel are encouraging or allowing this to happen?
I think it has to do with the work environment. And I chose to work in Norway after studying in Japan and in London, precisely to have a lifestyle that would make sense. uh, and I think the work environment and the way that we have enough projects ongoing to be able to bill customers enough so we can have enough R&D, I think, is one of the key. Because in my environment and the environment of other computational designers and startup founders and so on, they managed to grow personally and professionally very fast. So still in their late 20s, people who had gained a lot of expertise because they had those variety of projects to gain experience from. They had this economy where, yes, you can bill 50% of your weekly hours on this project because it's fine, it's a good project. But then you work a lot of RD&D and you test your scripts and you really develop things. So I think this work environment is one kind of the Scandinavian success factor as well. Because if you're always finishing at 10 p.m. working on free competition projects, you don't break things through, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel that life work balance has a lot to do. That like if you have enough time to rest and have enough time to think about creative stuff, it's easier. But for sure excited to see more companies coming from a Scandinavian background. Um, but I know you guys are extremely busy running your startup. So um, I just want to say thanks for everything. And before we wrap up, is it okay if I make a couple of quick ping pong questions? Um, Let me start with the first one. Can you say a great AC software?
I have to give credit to the McNeil family of Rhino. It was my gateway drug to the whole industry, sort of. Without that, at least I know I wouldn't be here in this position without Grasshopper and Rhino. So that's definitely what's got me into coding and programming and so on. So that'll be my pick.
Absolutely, that's a great pick. I guess Rhino, it's such an amazing tool, and the numbers of users is growing, still growing fast. Um, and moving to the next one, if you could collaborate with any person in history on any project, which person would you choose and why?
To me, it would be one of those top educational teachers, features, names of the building physics worlds in Germany and at MIT, for example. Yeah.
I would actually pick a man named Trevor Noah. It's not because of his, he's not too much involved into business, but I just find him really like, he has great world knowledge and such an interesting person in general. So just to be able to chit chat and have like daily discussions with him would probably be my pick.
Outside the AC, what are your hobbies or activities you have passion for?
I cook. If I'm not coding, I'm spending chopping some stuff and eating.
My passion goes to surfing. Actually, it's the thing I love the most. And I don't live in a country where it's that accessible, and it's usually like snowing or raining like hell. But I every now and then at least jump into the sea to catch some waves.
What's your favorite building in the world, and have you ever visited?
The beer building in Tokyo.
I'm going to be the more traditional pick here, but my vote goes to Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. It's probably the building that left the most impression on me in terms of level of detail and dedication to finalizing that craft. So it's an impressive piece of art.
Great picks. Before we wrap this up, can you tell everybody where they can know more about Spacio and where they can find more about you two?
You'll find us at www.spacio.ai, being traditional, adding the W there, and also on our LinkedIn profiles. Probably you can connect to us personally, and also to our company site at LinkedIn. So spacio.ai.
Thank you guys for being here. This was such an enlightened conversation, and I'm just really excited to see what Spacio is going to provide in the future for the industry. Hope you have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting.
Good to join you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to our listeners. If you like this content, you can find past and upcoming episodes in ascworks.everse.com and at all of our Everse social media. We'd love to hear from you and recommendations for new content, so leave us a DM and we'll make sure to catch it.